morning, everyone. My name is Paul, and I am a nerd. And you are either a nerd or you're not a nerd and you want to learn from a nerd, become a nerd, aspire to being a nerd. Whatever it is, welcome. You're at the, what month is this? I've got my milk duds to plant in my wife's car tomorrow. So it must be February, the February 2015 Attorney Computer Systems Coffee Pot webinar, and today we are talking about the Outlook plugin for PracticeMaster. But before we get started with that, a little bit of housekeeping, if you will. You should be looking at something on your screen that either looks like this whole thing, or maybe if you know what you're doing and you've been here before and you've heard me say this, you're just looking at this. This is the GoToWebinar control panel. This allows you to control your experience, but right now it's probably covering up part of my screen, or even if it's not, you might want to make my screen full screen, and then it would be covering it up. So this button right here that looks like an arrow pointing to the right will, when pressed, will make this part fly right off the right side of your screen and make it disappear. This will be the only thing left showing, and this button will turn into one that points to the left, because clicking it again while it's in that pointing to the left state will cause this box to fly back into focus, and you can use that box then to ask a question. Now, if you ask a question, you type it here, you press the send button. Don't forget that. That's the most important part. And Leanne, our humble and trivia-enabled moderator, and I now know what Leanne does while she's listening to me talk and waiting for something to do. She plays Trivia Crack. Leanne, our trivia-enabled and humble moderator, will recognize that you have a question. She will interrupt me at the opportune moment, and she'll ask your question on your behalf. Now, sometimes my mother could start a story and 20 minutes later not be done with the story, but have told 6 other stories on the way. I'm kind of like that. So sometimes I might get off track, or I might answer the wrong question, I might misunderstand, or you might just have a follow-up question based on an answer that I've provided. Keep typing those follow-up questions here, keep remembering to hit send, and Leanne will keep finding those opportune moments to interrupt me and ask your additional questions. Now, if you're not feeling shy, you can also press this button here that looks like a hand with an arrow pointing upward in front of it. That means raise your hand. And Leanne will, at that moment, interrupt me again at the opportune time, but instead of asking your question, she will simply unmute your microphone, and you will be in a two-way conversation with me, and you will remain in that two-way conversation with me until I'm done answering. So again, if I get off track or if you have follow-up questions, just keep talking to me and keep asking your questions, and we'll get them answered. Now, this, of course, is a no Frito, no Dorito zone. Once you're done, Leanne will mute your microphone back up, and you can go back to eating lunch if that's what you're doing. Now, somebody has their hand up, so I'm going to ask Leanne to put that hand down, and when she does, if you still have a question that you think requires that we unmute you and you ask it, feel free to put your hand back up, and if you have a question that you'd rather just type, do that, and I'll go ahead, and if your hand goes back up, Leanne will do her job and unmute me, or unmute you at the opportune time. I'm going to press a couple magic buttons here and get out of here. And where am I here? No, that's not what I'm doing. There we go. I don't want to save. I'm going to go over here, and I'm going to go to our sample copy of PracticeMaster. Now, before I get into what I'm talking about, I'm going to tell you 3 stories about my dad. Dad's been dead for, gosh, probably 5 or 6 years. It seems like yesterday, but he was a patent attorney, and he's who got me into this business. I won't tell you that story. And he would have been in his 90s now. So he started practicing patent law way back in the old days. So the first story is about how things were different. And Owen and Owen was the name of the firm, and Alan Owen and his brother, whose name escapes me, were the 2 brothers that ran the firm, and there were probably 4 or 5 associates. And when Alan or his brother got off the phone with a potential new client, they were intellectual property attorneys, so it was probably a company or an individual inventor. They would walk to their door, and they would yell down the hall, does anybody have any cases dealing with Eltra Corporation or Champion Spark Plug or whoever? And if nobody answered, that was their conflict of interest search. So you can tell that things were different then, okay? Now, my father was also a very I don't know whether to say disorganized or just messy. And I'll tell you a couple stories that emphasize what I'm talking about. When he died, it took us a couple of years to get into his office and start cleaning it up. But when we did, when we cleaned up his desk, it was like doing an archaeological dig. We'd go down 5 years and start pulling things out, and then we'd go down 10 years, and finally we got to the bottom of the desk, the actual desk, and that was when we had moved to our offices that we had probably been at for about 15 or 20 years. One day, long before that, before I was probably even born, Tilly, who was his longtime secretary, when he went out of town on vacation or on some business trip, she took a Polaroid, yes, if you know what that is, then you're old like me, a Polaroid picture of his desk. She cleaned it up and took another picture, and she was so proud of herself. And when he came back, he probably could not have been more furious because he knew where everything was. She now knew where everything was, but he didn't. And that was very disruptive to him. Now that leads into the story that's going to tie this all together. Back in the old days, when letters were written, they were typed by Tilly or somebody else in a typing room. They were typed, okay? And they were typed with carbon paper, or at some point they got memory typewriters and they could just redo them. And we won't go through all the types of equipment they had before computers were invented. And so this copy would be taken and put into the chronological file, and the real letter would be taken into my father's office or whichever attorney's office. They would review it and sign it, and then the secretary would take it away. The attorney merely dictated the letter and then signed it. And so what happened was the secretary had some control over what was going on. She could take that copy and put it in what was called a chronological file. She could take a photocopy of the letter that was signed and put that in the client's file. And if it was something that was to be billed for, which probably it was, she could take care of that. And that's what I'm getting to. We've lost that. Legal assistants are no longer in the circle of the production of correspondence. 99.987265% of all correspondence that's done in law office to this day, okay, I made that up, is email. Most of the correspondence that's done these days is email. Client correspondence, opposing counsel, co-counsel, any type of correspondence, virtually all of it's email. And so the secretary is out of the loop. Now, we may BCC the secretary, we may do a lot of things, but the secretary is no longer right there in the middle of what's going on. So what's happening? These things aren't necessarily being put away in the right place. Back when Tilly took my father John's letter and had him sign it, she took the copy and put it in the chrono file. She took the copy and put it in the client's file. So that when my father wanted to look at that file for that particular matter, that particular invention, he would have her bring him the file and he would be able to see everything. Nowadays, we commonly see attorneys searching through inboxes, looking for emails. Sometimes we see them putting those emails into little folders over on the left-hand side of their Outlook inbox. Maybe they have some folders over here that they put those emails into. The problem with that is they're not always doing it. But the bigger problem is these folders over here that may relate to this matter and this matter and this matter would be something that only they could see, not something that everybody else can see. So if you're in a firm where you've got other people, a paralegal, perhaps another attorney, perhaps some legal assistants that all need to know what's going on with this file, that's not happening. But the big problem is attorneys are billing less. Now, some attorneys will say, I don't want to bill for every email that's sent. Well, that's fine. I don't care. But if you spend, 6 minutes or 15 minutes or 25 minutes drafting a lengthy response to an email, giving instructions to the client or the person that's going to be deposed or whatever it is that you're doing, you want to bill for that time. And most of the emails that are sent need to be billed for. That's where the PracticeMaster toolbar comes in. Now, as you know, you probably are here because you've got PracticeMaster. So as you know, we can pull up, let's do Michael Larson's case. So here's my list of cases in my PracticeMaster, and here's Michael Larson, and when I double-click, I can see all these things, including emails and including fees. Well, I probably should have looked at this before I started this webinar. I'm going to very quickly go into client configure client pages, and I'm going to turn on the ability to see fees. Here we go. And I'm going to get out of here. And yes, you can also see fees. So obviously you can bill for things from PracticeMaster. Many of you know that. Some of you might not. You can see the current WIP fees that have not yet been billed to that client, and depending on how you've got your integration set up between PracticeMaster and Tabs, the billing software, you might also be able to see the archived fees, the stuff that's already been billed. But how does that get in there? How do those things happen as a part of managing your inbox? It all revolves around this thing called the PracticeMaster toolbar. Now, I'm in a version of Outlook that has these ribbon things. You can tell I'm old because I call them these ribbon things. So if I click on the PracticeMaster ribbon, I will see the PracticeMaster toolbar. If you're in an older version of Outlook, you might have different toolbars that are showing here. Okay? But here's the PracticeMaster toolbar. Now, a couple things to define. First off, you can set your default settings. When you send an email, a new message, do you want to journal it automatically? If so, turn this on. Do you want to calendar it automatically? More on that in a second. If so, turn this on. And do you want to automatically be prompted to bill for it? Now think about that. Do you want to bill for every single email you send, or more than 50% of them? If so, turn this on. Now keep in mind, it's going to pop up and say, who do we bill for? And if you're not going to bill for it, you just hit escape. You'll see that in just a second. So your choices are enabled, disabled, or last use. Last use is kind of the way it used to be before version 17, where you'd have it set to do it, and then you may turn it off, and then you may turn it back on, and then you may turn it off. Most people don't want that. They want it enabled or disabled for these different types of things that can happen. Record linking, I'm going to talk about that in a second, but right now it's on, and it's enabled in here. And then you can define the folders that you move these things to when they're journaled. And the column indicators, we're going to talk about that in a second, but this is how you click select folder, you select which of these folders you want them in, and it will install these 3 columns that show you what you've journaled, what you've billed for, and what you've calendared. Now, if you're not familiar with the concept, you may be thinking, well, what the hell is he talking about? What is journaling? What is billing? Let's do that real quick, and then we're going to come back to where we are now. So just for the heck of it, I'm going to say this email about it being Paul Hirschman and David Dagis's birthday today from Facebook is very important to me, and I'm going to journal it, and I'm going to put it in the Michael Jensen file because it actually has to do with Michael Jensen. We're going to pretend it's not a birthday announcement. So I'm simply going to hit this journal button. PracticeMaster is going to pop up and say, who does that go to? And I said Jensen. He's an attorney in my sample data. I meant Michael Larson. So I'm going to type Larson. I don't know his matter number, and I don't have to. I'm going to put this in Michael Larson's client matter. Now, when I hit Tab, it goes out and says, okay, we got one matter from Michael Larson. It's the workers' comp case. I'm going to put it there. If I typed White, which is another client, Kelly White, and hit Tab, it would say, well, you got 3 cases for Kelly. You've got a divorce, you've got a last will and testament, and some sort of medical care, probably tied to the last will and testament of an offspring or a child. Which one do you want to bill this to? I'm going to actually go back and do what I said I was going to do. I'm going to create this journal entry for Michael Larson. I just said bill to, and I was mistaken. I'm actually creating a journal record. So I'm creating a journal record for Michael Larson of this email that you saw back on my Outlook screen, and all I have to do is hit save. All I have to do is hit save, and it's there. Now, it journaled it to Michael Larson. If we go back to Michael Larson's case and refresh the screen, email, thank you, Leanne. this Facebook communication will be there. I now have taken this email and put it in Michael Larson's matter in PracticeMaster. What's so significant about that? Well, A, I'm putting it away. I'm putting it away in the right place, and I'm putting it away in a place where everybody can now see it. So if Michael Larson, sorry, I got to get my name straight. If Michael Larson calls me this afternoon while I'm at lunch, and my paralegal ends up taking the call, that person can review what I sent to Michael Larson before she even picks up the call, because it's there. It's in the file. It's in the right place. Now, at the same time, I may want to bill for that. So I can take that same email and I can say, well, Normally, and we're going to talk about protocol, and we're going to talk about the fact that most of your billing and journaling of emails is in sent items. I'm simply in deleted items because it's where I have some emails that I can kind of mess around with and not mess up in my own system. So now I want to bill for this. All I have to do is create a fee for Michael Larson, who already knows that I put the email away with him, so it's going to automatically suggest that that's who I'm going to bill. Now, I can have any sort of description come up as a default. I can have it automatically use me because I'm the person who is logged into PracticeMaster, and I am, in this instance, Michael Jensen, the attorney. It will automatically use the date of the email, the date it was sent. I can have it automatically put in whatever minimum I want. So if I said I only bill in a minimum of 0.1 hours, then this would come up with 0.1. Now, if doing that email took 4/10 of an hour, I could simply change this at this point to 0.4. And I can either augment this description or not. So email communication with Paul Perdue regarding deposition. Bam, I save it, and I'm done. Except that it doesn't know how to spell Purdue, which is just awful. But we have now billed for it. And now we have an F in this column to indicate that this email has been billed for, a fee record has been created. We have a J in this column for this email to indicate that this email has been journaled. If I wanted, I could now delete this email from Outlook knowing that I have the email put away in PracticeMaster. And that's actually what I do. If you look at my sent items, I've been on the road, so it may have some things, but it's 9. And sometime today, when I get time, I am going to go through and put those all away. And that's the protocol that I'm talking about. What do you bill for? Do you go through your inbox? Do you go through your deleted items? No, it's your sent items. When you reply to something, that's when you want to put it away. When you reply to something, that's what you're billing for. You're billing for your time to compose that reply to that email. Now, it is probably safe to say that at least 80% of all emails that get journaled, and I'm guessing it's more like 90 or 95, come from sent items. When do you journal an inbox item? Well, if you're going to reply to it, then it's going to become a sent item. So you don't journal the receipt of the email. You just reply to it and journal that. You reply to it and you bill for that. When do you create a journal record for something that's in your inbox? Let's take this scenario. I email somebody and I say, let's meet next Tuesday at 2 o'clock. And they reply back and say, 2 o'clock doesn't work, how about 3? And I reply back and I say, perfect, I'll call you at 3 o'clock next Tuesday and I'll call your direct line. Then they reply back and say, okay, I'll talk to you then. Well, I'm not going to reply and say, yep, I'll talk to you then, or thanks for replying. That email doesn't warrant a reply. However, the fact that they replied and said, yes, I will meet with you, I am confirming, that's an example of an inbox email that you would journal and then probably delete, because now you've got it journaled, you're not going to reply to it, and you can simply delete it. 9 times out of 10, that's not the situation. 9 times out of 10, you're replying, yes, I'll meet with you at 3 o'clock, and I'll call you on your direct line. Bam, journal it, bill for it, if you're going to bill for it, and be done with it. And if they reply back and say, okay, or thanks, or whatever, you may want to journal that acknowledgement, but it's not something that you're typically going to do from the inbox. It's typically going to be from the sent items. Now, let's go back to these default settings for a second. Let's talk about linking. You set it here, whether or not you're going to link. People are very confused by this. They think that linking on means that it's going to automatically ask them to journal an email. That's not the case. That's whether or not journaling a new message is enabled. Linking is merely whether or not you are going to establish a link after you've journaled it between the email and in Outlook and the journal record in PracticeMaster. Why would you want a link established? Well, that's how you get this little J to indicate that you have journaled it. What happens is when I journal this email, it goes out and puts it in PracticeMaster, and then it comes back to Outlook and creates this J in this Outlook record and links the two together. If I were to try to journal this again, instead of journaling it again, it would actually take me to the record in PracticeMaster to tell me, hey, you've already journaled this, here it is. And if I didn't have linking on, it wouldn't be able to do that. That's what linking is. Very confusing for people, but that's really all it is. Now, another thing that sometimes confuses people is why would you want to create a calendar item from an email? Well, I got an email yesterday about a webinar that I had signed up for that I didn't attend, and it was merely a link to the recorded version of the webinar. I want to watch that. I'm not going to leave that email in my inbox because I might not watch it for a week or two. So what I did was I hit the calendar button, and it created a calendar item with the entire body of the email in here, so that that link that was included in the email I'm talking about is here. And then I can change the description. I can make it a task or an event. Usually they're tasks. And so what you're doing then is you're saying, let me get back out of here, take this email and use it to create a calendar item so that I can then, when I get that task and say I'm going to do this, I don't have to go looking for the email. I have taken the body of the email, put it in there. I can click on the link. I can watch the webinar that I missed that I'm now watching a recorded version of, and I'm done. I can go and check that off, and that's one of the reasons, one of the ways that I keep my inbox clean, is that if I've got something that's in my inbox that I really want to keep there because I'm going to do something with it, but not till next week or the week after, I create a task out of it. I create a calendar item so that the actual email can go away, because I want a very clean inbox so that I'm not always looking at something over and over again saying, yeah, I'll get to that later, yeah, I'll get to that later, yeah, I'll get to that later. So that, in a nutshell, is the Outlook toolbar. You'll find it over here as a ribbon, or you'll find it somewhere over here if you're in an older version of Outlook and you don't have ribbons. One thing that I recommend is that if you're going to journal a lot of emails, if you right-click on this, in certain versions of Outlook, you can add it to what's called the Quick Access Toolbar. And doing so, we'll leave it here, but it will also add it up here so that you don't even have to get off of the home ribbon. You can just journal an email by clicking the appropriate button up here once you've put it in that Quick Access Toolbar. And then if you decide you didn't like that, maybe you put all three of them, fee, calendar, and journal, and you decide all you want is fee and journal, you can take the calendar one off just by right-clicking and choosing Remove from Quick Access Toolbar. So that's a little tip about how to use it and make it immediately accessible to you without having to click over here to this ribbon. Now, I'm going to stop there. People know how to get a hold of me if they have questions. Leanne's reaching for her mouse to see if anybody has any final questions. And while she's doing that, I'm going to take you out here to attorneycomputersystems.com. And I am going to show you that from now on, if you miss one of these webinars, or we also have our virtual user group meetings for Tabs, PracticeMaster, and World Docs. And we also have this thing called the eBytes video series. That's Mary Jo's little deal. And we also have the Paul and Mary Jo show. But if we go to the Coffee Pot webinars, we will see that we can sign up. We've already got the registration link for the March webinar, and that's going to be about using PracticeMaster. I thought, wait, that's the same thing we're doing. No, take control of your firm's contact management. We're going to talk about how to use contacts in PracticeMaster to market, to manage your relationships with people that are not clients. Maybe people that are potential clients, maybe people that can bring you clients, can refer clients to you, how to use PracticeMaster for contact management. But as you get to this Coffee Pot webinar page and scroll down, not only will you see the link to register for the next one, but you will see the recorded versions of everything we've done. Now this one right here is currently in production. This is the one we're attending right now. But when we scroll down, we get to actual videos that we can click on. So you can go back as far as we've been recording. And when it gets to the virtual user group meetings, some of these go back 3 or 4 years. Our eBytes, we've been recording probably for 2 or 3 years. Our Paul and Mary Jo show, maybe 2 years. So there's a lot of video content out here. Don't hesitate to take advantage of it. It's always there for you. It's there to put you to sleep at night. It's there to wake up to in the morning. Have fun with it. And we will see you next month when we talk about contact management. Thanks, everybody. Have a good day. Bye-bye.